Well, if I'm not visually impaired, I am now when you look at these lights. So how's everybody doing? Good morning, good afternoon, I guess wherever you are, especially the people that are looking online. Thank you to the organizers of WordCamp US and everybody that's involved, the volunteers, the tech team, wow. And especially the people who have come to this talk. I don't know why you would come to this talk. No, I shouldn't say that. But thank you for doing that. And so let's get started because I know we're on a timer. And I'm going to actually sit down here to make it a little easier, I suppose. Yes, I'm going to be talking about using low vision as my tool to help me teach WordPress. Sounds like a crazy title. Anyway, here I am, Bud Kraus. Now, yes, I have a new hat because my wife wanted to upgrade me. And I do actually two different things. One is that I create WordPress content for WordPress businesses. That means articles, tutorials, videos, all that kind of stuff. I love it. It's like, in 2 words, I'm a technical writer. And the other thing I do is I have this podcast called Seriously, Bud, where every Friday at 8 o'clock, don't stop. Keep going. No, wait a minute, I only have 41 minutes left, so, it's a podcast where I do an unexpected conversation with somebody in the WordPress community. We don't do the WordPress journey stuff. We talk about your life, which is really cool because there's so many amazing people in this world. Anyway, so what am I not going to be talking about? All the technical stuff, okay? Because this is not that talk. It's not about WCAG, a most inaccessible word if I ever heard of one, and markup and ARIA and compliance and all that stuff and all tags. And no, that's not what this is, okay? I don't even know that much about that stuff anyway. But before we go any further, we are going to do a quiz. So beam your cell phone on that code, or if you're at home or wherever you are, you want to follow along with this interactive survey. Excuse me, go to joyofwp.com/survey, and you're going to find 4 questions. And I'll give you a minute or so to fill out. Some of the questions are easy. I think they're all easy, actually, but I know the answers. And when you're done, I will give you another 10 seconds. I'm generous. And then we're going to tabulate the answers, and okay, time's up. Excuse me. Let's find out maybe I should have some water. That's what this is for, right? And let's find out the answers. Now, the answers are going to be read to me because I don't know what the answers are.
The first question, Bud, was the only thing to do for a person with low vision is to make text larger.
No.
And their choices were true or false.
And how we do?
Well, 100% people said true.
Okay, so I gave you that one, okay? It's kind of obvious. All right, number 2.
Number 2, which of the following present difficulties for people with low vision? There were 4 answers: stairways, bumping into objects, recognizing faces, and bright sunlight. They could choose as many as they thought were correct.
And,
well, 100% of the people said stairways. No one said bumping into objects. And we got a 50-50 on recognizing faces and bright sunlight.
Wait a minute. We have some people saying that they did. The bottom line is they're all problems for some people because people with vision disability or vision loss presents different issues for different people. It's not just one standard. Okay, number 3.
Question number 3 was, eyeglasses are used to correct vision to 20/20. And it was a true or false?
And the answer is false. But until today, because my glasses were just clean and I could see everything. Well, I could see the 2 bright lights.
Well, the good news is 100% of people answering got that correct.
Yeah, okay. And the next, I gave you easy ones. Okay, and the next one?
And the very last question, if you lose vision, does your sense of smell get better? It's a yes or no.
And?
100% of the people said yes.
And you're all wrong.
Oh.
At least in my case, and let me explain. In my case, it was touch. Touch is what I use as a substitute for vision. And I didn't know that until many years after having the condition, that when I wanted to see something, I needed it to be in my hand. And the combination of the vision that I have and my sense of touch, which has gotten really exquisite, made me see what the object was. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people who are blind or legally blind when they walk down steps, they curl their feet around the corners of the steps so that they know where the edges are. And I do that kind of thing too. Okay, so now that we got this fabulous quiz done, let's talk about what is age-related macular degeneration, which is what I have, and sorry I keep doing that, which is what I was diagnosed when I was 37 years old. So this is something that I'm quite familiar with. And it is the leading cause of legal blindness in the United States. All right, but how do we know? Or what does it look like? So I'm glad you asked that question. So I say, be careful here because, when you watch TV, it says the following images may be disturbing. And I'm telling you, they may be disturbing. Okay. So here's like what I sort of see. All right. So obviously the left side is good vision, the right side not so good. There's a big black scotoma that indicates a destruction of central vision, which is the hallmark of macular degeneration. Now, my scotoma doesn't quite look like that, but a lot of people who really are in bad shape with this condition will have this kind of vision. Here's another example. I look a little more like this, as far as I know. This is sort of more how I see. You'll notice, though, in both cases, and here's another one, that the peripheral vision is fine. And because periphery is fine, and people like me don't bump into things. We don't need white canes, we don't need dogs, we don't need that kind of stuff. It's just straight ahead. In fact, I was thinking before, if you just put your arms out like this, and you just try to look through your fist, that's sort of like how I see things, or don't see things. All right, how do they test for macular degeneration? Because you may have a parent or whatever that's like, my mother's getting macular or my grandmother or whatever. So what they do is they give you this test called the Amsler grid. And if everything is good, all these little boxes, the horizontal and vertical lines, line up perfectly. But if not, this is what you're going to see. And like, ugh. So something is wrong. And this is basically how the first test I ever had was something like this. Wasn't as pronounced. It was much smaller. It was one eye. But I knew when I saw that, I said, ugh, that's probably not the way you're supposed to look at this thing. And that's definitely a classic example. Here's another example of what it might look like, I think in a more advanced case. Okay, little AMD factoids. Now, I know they don't use the word factoids anymore, but a couple of little facts about what macular degeneration is. There's two kinds. There's the wet and dry kind. And the common symptoms, well, in both cases, glasses and oh, okay, I just heard I thought I was hearing things. All right. In both cases, is there a sound coming out of somewhere?
It's coming from the front row. He's trying to turn his phone off.
All right. Very good. Okay. In both cases, they're not correctable it's irreversible, and it's not correctable by glasses, all right? The dry kind is a more prevalent. About 90% of people have the dry kind. 10% have the wet kind. Of course, I have the wet kind, which is the worst. Its hallmark is the rapid loss of vision. What's going on, in a nutshell, when somebody is newly diagnosed, there's these tiny hair-like vessels grow into the retina, and they start to leak and destroy the retina. And that's not good, and that's really, in essence, what wet macular degeneration is. It's fairly prevalent. You see 200 million people around the world have it, 20 million here, and it's expected to go to 288 million in 2040. And this is one of my favorites, the risk factors. Okay, age. Well, yeah, but I was 37, so there is a juvenile form of the condition. Whether you're a woman, you're more likely to get the condition. White, Caucasian, yes. And then the usuals, obesity, smoking, and genetics, thanks mom, all right, because she had it, and we think my grandfather had it. So that's where I think, all this came from. So anyway, now, I see things in a little different ways, you can kind of imagine. And these are the four areas that I'm just going to talk briefly about. One is my depth of field is terrible. And that's why everything sort of appears very flat to me. And I walk down steps like an old man. Yes, I know I'm an old man, stop it. But I walked down steps like an old man when I was 37, so that was a problem then. Color blindness, well, you would sort of expect I might have a problem with color, reds and greens and so forth. I have a real hard time distinguishing. Contrast is a real problem for me. I usually pump up everything to like really bright so I can see it on my screen. And something I call the prism effect, although what happens is I have the condition in both eyes and they don't function together. And so I have sort of this split prism vision of everything. Now it would drive this, if you saw what I saw like right now, it would just drive you crazy. And to me, it's just like being right-handed. It's like no big deal. So how do I do all this stuff? Well, I have 3 keywords here: Zoom, audio, and touch. So I have this little video to play. Let's see if I can get to that. We're going to see it right now. It's about 8 minutes or so, and it's going to show you what do I do to make my life easier using a computer. And it's not so much WordPress yet. We'll get to that in a little bit, but what do I do? Remember, very idiosyncratic, as I'm about to say, because everybody does these things, or people with disabilities use technology. Every one of these is just every person just does the stuff differently. Okay, let's roll tape.
Welcome to my world of settings and preference changes. Now I use Ventura on a Mac OS. It's the most recent version.
Okay, so it's not the most recent version. Okay, so this is a little dated. That's why I just wanted to interject that, but okay.
Of Mac. And I'm going to take you through some of the highlights and the key settings that I use for my computer. Now keep in mind, everybody with some kind of impairment or disability will be using different settings. This is very idiosyncratic just for me. And that's the key, is that there are plenty of choices that are built into the operating system for a user to have at their disposal, and here are mine. So the first thing I'm going to show you is display right over here, and this is the display driver. I use a pretty low resolution, 1280 pixels by 720 pixels, and if I wanted to change the display, I would just click on that. You can see the Mac OS has quite a few different display drivers, which is good. Now, bad thing is, I believe it's with this operating system, they no longer make it easy for you to change the brightness of your screen. If I go over here, you'll see the display brightness. You can't do it through the operating system anymore. You have to do it through the monitor itself. I don't like it. Now, if I was using a Mac monitor, no problem. But what Apple is saying is we no longer give you the ability to change the brightness because there's so many different monitors out there. Do it through your monitor settings, which I'm not going to show you, but that's exactly what I did. Now also we have accessibility settings. I think some of these settings are so important, they shouldn't even put it into accessibility, they just put it into all these other options over here. That's just my editorial comment. And I don't use everything, so for example, I don't use VoiceOver, a way of listening to actions and functions taking place on the computer. No, I don't use that. I certainly use Zoom. And so the way I have this set is when I press the command key and I scroll like this with my mouse, I can see this much better. I can really zoom in, and sometimes I go crazy and zoom all the way in. And you get this effect of going back and forth a lot, but at least I get the job done. Also, there is a display area in accessibility, and this is different than the display driver for the monitor. And let's just take a look over here. I'm going to actually zoom in and show you how I do this. If I wanted to invert the colors, now a lot of people like this. It's what I call the ultimate and dark mode, but I don't. But many people, as I've said, who have vision impairments will definitely use this reverse mode. Let's skip down a little bit over here and look at increased contrast. Well, I definitely want high contrast because it just makes things easier. If I were to turn this off, yeah, you can see. It makes it hard for me to see. So I'm going with that. Reduce transparency. Let's go down to over here, and I have display contrast. Well, very important. Again, contrast is a big deal. You can see it gets really washed out, at least for me. I pushed it way up over here. Now it's funny they call this normal, huh? So if I went all the way out to here, let's see what we have. Well, that's a little bit too...
Now, I don't think you're seeing some of the results of this because of the way it's recorded. So I'm realizing, like, you're not really seeing the effect of all this. At least I don't think so, and I think it's the way the recording technology that was involved.
Too hard for me to see, so it's just easier if I move it back to right about where it was like this. That's fine. If I scroll down a little bit more, the pointer, that is this over here, I can adjust that too. And you can see I've pushed it all the way up to the largest possible size. Now I can change that, of course, to make it smaller. But it really makes it hard for me to find where the pointer is. And I just found out a little bit ago that you can change the color of the pointer. That's interesting. Now, I don't use this color filters option over here, so I'm going to bypass that. Let's go over here and look at spoken content. Click on that over here. Now, this one I use all the time. So in addition to zooming, the other way that I understand content is to use this control right over here. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to move this out over here. And I've got this text document over here that I'm writing for a post on my website about being chosen to speak at WordCamp Europe. Now, let me just show you this right over here, or you can listen to this. And I'm going to select these 3 paragraphs. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, the font's much bigger than it would normally be. And it makes it easier for me to see. And what I'll do is just press Command and B.
A couple of years ago, I was watching a live stream from Paris. It was WordCamp Europe 2017. Or maybe it was WordCamp 2018 from Belgrade. Or maybe WCEU coming from Berlin. Looking back, it doesn't really matter. All I thought was, wouldn't it be cool to go to WordCamp Europe one day?
Now, when I do that, you can see the visual control goes away, so I can't pause it anymore, and it just stops, which is a little bit inconvenient. Sometimes I wish there were a pause operation available.
I think it's been changed so that it doesn't disappear anymore when you pause. Okay.
Either just start or stop. Now you might be wondering, how do I even understand what I just heard? And yes, over time I've gotten adjusted and used to hearing speech at a much faster rate than most people can understand. This also has the interesting ability to do the following. Let's just zoom in over here. I sort of use a combination of zooming and text-to-speech. So we've got this option over here. Oh yes, I can change the person that's speaking. But I've been with Samantha so long, I just stay with her. And for the speech
I'm
rate,
loyal.
you can see I can change it to tortoise or hare, which is what these little symbols are, I guess. Now down over here, let me scroll, let me push this out a little bit, because even my wife always says it's too close, too big, which makes it hard for her to see. Anyway, I'm going to go over here. Let's see. Speaking announcements, fine. This is the one I want to show you. I put this on over here. So this is very interesting. So I don't use this, as you can tell. But
Speak announcements.
so wherever. So that's very good. Now, now you might be wondering, well, what about like third-party applications? Will it work? I can't tell you that. It probably does, but it's certainly going to work for all Apple-based products. Now I'm going to turn this off. Okay, I'll show you one other option here too. Again, this is not one I use, but just to give you a little touch of something that you probably don't know much about is
Capital H E O E here is W-A-X-Y. Cap A-Y.
okay. Now what about if I wanted to hear the whole thing? I'm just going to highlight it like so.
Here is what I have to say.
All right, not bad. And that's a pretty good overview of the things that I use. Now, you notice I don't use dictation, and there's a whole lot of other things that I could use, but as I'm a very big proponent of only using the technology that you really need. And what do these technologies do? They provide alternatives for a person like me so that I can access and understand information in a way that I would not otherwise have been able to.
Okay. So you get an idea of the kinds of things, that I've done with my system. Again, very different for everybody that has a disability. Now, another thing I do is I recognize patterns. And I think pattern recognition is a very low level of understanding things. And patterns are really important to me. In fact, so important that when people change the user interfaces of their websites, or anything for that matter, it just can drive me crazy. I'll give you, for example, when you do those card things, you pay for something. Every machine now is different. Tap, slide, stick, whatever. Well, there's no patterns to this, and it just can drive me crazy. So recognizing patterns is a very important way of learning and understanding for me. It's really a big deal. So for example, as a teacher, and we're going to get into all the teacher stuff in a minute, this was easy for me to teach because there was a recognizable pattern. All tags have open and closing tags, simple. Also pretty simple, CSS, it's got a recognizable pattern, right? Style properties and so on, values. So that was pretty easy because of the recognizable syntax or the pattern syntax. Not so easy, PHP. So I still struggle with it because it's not, there's no pattern to it, if you will. JavaScript, even harder for me. So those things always held me back until AI, and then everything changed. Okay, and then let me see, what about teaching WordPress? Yes, because there must be a connection between low vision and teaching WordPress. Yes, there is. So, and why the low vision made me a better teacher. For one thing, I can't wing it, okay? In fact, today, I have it all memorized because I can't read anything or very little. So I have to walk into class knowing what's the beginning, a middle, and an end. I have to know everything, where I'm starting, where I'm going, the whole bit. Because I know that I'm not the kind of person that can just walk in and just say, okay, let's just review these 10 websites today. It's not gonna happen. So being prepared, I think, made me a better teacher. Another thing that I learned to do is define everything. This is one of the hallmarks of accessibility, is define everything. So all the terminology I would use in class, like page, post, meta box, whatever, I learned all that stuff so I can define what this stuff is so that people would understand it. I wouldn't just leave them hanging. If I introduced a term like taxonomy, then I'd have to stop and say that a taxonomy is, and I would go ahead and define it. Another thing that's a real hallmark and principle of accessibility is grouping things. So I learned in class that I would group either material, design, ideas, whatever, it became, the whole concept of grouping was very important. And it really is in accessible design. So, okay. Now, another thing I learned is I have to have patience, not just with my students, but with myself, because the tendency is to be impatient, and then it's just harder to learn. So it turned out that it takes me longer to learn things than other people, but I tend to also learn it a little deeper than other people too. But yeah, I had to learn how to have patience with students. And then I do get by with a little help from my friends. So I'm not afraid to ask people anymore, hey, can you help me read this or see this, or, what am I eating? So, yeah, because sometimes I don't know what I'm eating, and that has not always been a pleasant experience. So I do that. And low vision, I don't know why I have this picture, okay? I must tell you, there's no rhyme or reason to this picture, but I just like it, so it's there. And low vision is my very own special app. And by that I mean, it's the filter upon which, obviously, that I see the world. And that, yes, I do see things differently, but it's also makes it easier for me to understand this isn't accessible, this isn't usable, this isn't whatever, because if it's not working for me, chances are it's not as good as it could be for everyone else. Yeah, I learned that, and that's it. I'm about to leave. So thank you for coming, but wait a minute, there's more. Hold on, we're not done. This is my favorite part of the talk, okay? 4 things about, that vision impairment is not the worst thing in the world. It sounds pretty bad, but I've learned, no. It's actually, in many ways, I've come to understand after all these years, it's not only not a curse, it's really a blessing. I know that sounds weird, but I've been able to do a lot of things, see a lot of things, talk to a lot of people that I would have never had the chance to do. Like, for example, right here, you get to speak at WordCamp US. I don't know if I'd ever be able to do that without being visually impaired, so who knows. What do I have over here?
You don't see anyone growing old.
That's right. And that's really the real good thing, is that because my central vision is just a mess, I don't see wrinkles, I don't see stuff like that on people. And it's really nice. And I don't even see it on me, which is even the best. So, yeah, that's why I think like I'm like 25 and I know I'm not 25. So, yeah, that's a real blessing about vision impairment. Here's another one that's, I think is that, you tend to not see all the junk food in the grocery stores. And you tend to, it's easier to see the fruit and vegetables than all the junk food. And, of course, the last one, this is, you can go to any party and get as drunk as you want because you're not the one that's driving home. So, yeah. Man, you can go ahead and clap because that's the best line I've got. Yeah. It's really true. Like I said, again, it sounds like a curse. But I have learned it's really a blessing. But when I first got this, blessing wasn't exactly what I had in my mind because, you're 37 years old, you got 2 little kids. It's devastating. How am I going to ever go forward with this? And it takes a long time. If you're familiar with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and the grief model, and you go from grief and, until you get to bargaining, and then you get to acceptance, and then you get to who knows what. But, it does work. It just takes time. Okay, we got a bunch of microphones. So would somebody please, because otherwise, yeah, any questions? I can't see anything.
They're on their way.
Okay.
So do you have any experience with Accessible or Accessible? It's a widget for Word websites. Just wondering if you were
Why don't you
using
say it again? Because I think I'm hearing impaired too now. So
Accessible. It's a widget that you can add, and it will essentially make all of the adjustments for visually impaired or ADHD, seizure sensitive.
So are you the developer?
No.
Okay. No. But tell me a little bit more about it. Is it something that it's on the front end of the site that people can adjust the text easier?
Yeah, essentially that's it. So my developer was saying it's a distraction for people who have disabilities because they already have that set up on their end.
See, I think so too, because people in my category, if you will, we know how to make things, we know how to zoom in, make things bigger with keystrokes, with the mouse, with whatever. So I sometimes wonder the value of something like that. We're gone are the days where everything was like in hard-coded, pixel-sized 12-point, you couldn't, it wasn't fluid. So, yeah, design has come a long way for people like me, and so has technology.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, Bud.
Yeah.
It's Cammie.
Oh, Cammie.
I'm really glad you can't see my wrinkles. That made my day. I
was just kidding. I didn't mean that.
I really wanted to ask you about alt text and how we approach that in web designs. And, it's always a push and pull with the client that maybe wants to utilize the image to get a message out versus really describing what the image is and what's the best approach to that.
Yeah, okay. I have a couple rules or ideas on this. One is, if for any reason you have graphical text in your graphics, which is kind of ridiculous at this point, but I know people still do, then all of that should be in the alternative text description, because remember, assistive technology like JAWS and some of that fancy stuff is going to read that out loud. So that would be a minimum. But I would also describe, so let's assuming you don't have that situation, then I would describe the purpose of the image or what the image is. Headshot of Cammie McNamara, something like that, because you just think of if you couldn't see this image, how would you describe it? And that answers, and I know some people, a lot of people say, well, it's for SEO. No, first and foremost, it's assistive, technology. That's what it's for. So, that would be my approach, let me ask you a question. What do you do? Do you use AI to generate alternative text?
I do have a tool that I use on client websites that are rather large. If it's a small website, I will often do it by hand.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, and never leave it empty or blank, obviously. Just come up with, I mean, in the olden days, people used to put in the word image. So when assistive technology would read it, it would just say image. Well, That's not real helpful. Yeah. All right, I hope that helped. Anybody else?
I've got one. Hi, Bud. I'm a developer. I love developing for accessibility. And my question is, when you go to a website, are there signs that you get that you say, this website was built with me in mind?
Yeah, that's really kind of interesting. Yes and no. I find that websites that are really just too busy, too much content, not enough white space, for me, is just a pain in the neck. It's probably bad for most people. On the other hand, you would think a site like Amazon would be a catastrophe, and it's not. Yeah, I mean, Amazon's sort of the exception to me because I look at that and go, how do you use Amazon? You know, and I do. Maybe it's because I've just gotten used to it. Who knows? But I find sites that are very busy. Travel sites, stuff like that, where there are just a million ads and I can't do that stuff. I just ask my wife, you know, can you do? I just can't. It's overload for me, and I realize it's probably not just overload for you. It's probably overload for everybody, you know. And one last thing on this point, which is a real smart person told me a long time ago, you know, when you talk about accessible design, you know, you make things possible for me, but you make it better for everybody else. I mean, that is really, I think, one of the hallmarks of what accessibility means, is to make it better for everybody else. And not think in just terms of, we have to make this for blind people, which is what a lot of people, you know, at least they used to think. It's ridiculous. It's really to make it better for everybody else. Oh, come on, somebody, we have
I have one
11
question.
minutes. I get you for 11 minutes and 32 seconds. All right, go ahead.
My name is Dottie. I have a small website design firm here
Okay.
locally. And I want to revisit the accessibility question that we started with. There's several other programs out there that do this. And it's sold to us as protect your clients from getting sued
Yeah.
for not having accessible websites. And I would like to know from your point of view, is that really a true thing? Like, are people really getting sued for not having accessible websites?
Oh, yes, that is true.
But is it from valid people like you, or is it from somebody who's just looking to win a lawsuit and get paid for doing no work in life?
You know, it probably runs the gamut, would be my guess. I mean, you know, there's a class action lawsuit for everything, right? So you got to figure some of that's in there. But I think I'm sure there's legitimate, what I would call, cases that sites should have been accessible. And you know, why wouldn't don't get me started because, but why wouldn't businesses want to appeal to the broadest possible audience in the world? Like, for example, why wouldn't an Amazon want to cater to me? Do you think I might want to buy a book for somebody? Maybe. You know, so we can't just say, well, because they're impaired or they have a problem, you know, we're not going to appeal to. That's crazy. So, yeah, but I don't think a solution that's marketed as keep yourself out of legal trouble will take care of it. In fact, I think they're kind of opening themselves up to a lawsuit, or could be, unless they have some pretty good hold harmless and disclaimer clauses in there. Yeah, that to me is troublesome to say. I get it. They're selling a product, and this solves a problem, but does it really solve the problem? You know, I can't see that. I mean, I get it from a marketing standpoint, but wow, I think that's, you know, asking for trouble to make that kind of a statement. So, yes.
And I have a question on design and revenue. When considering ADA and
Yeah.
just including ads revenue and pop-ups and things
Right.
like that, how does that affect your user experience for visually impaired?
Yeah. Any kind.
Also
I'm going
pop-ups.
to twist this question a little bit, okay? And that is, any type of UI which covers other content is a problem, and so pop-ups can be a problem unless there's an easy way to X out and stuff like that. That's very clear, or you know, you lose focus from the pop-up and the pop-up goes away. Okay, yeah, I'll give you, for example, you go to a website and let's say there's a drop down, and the drop down is the same color as the back of the rest of the page. I can't distinguish between what is the drop down and what's the rest of the page. And so I get lost. I can't figure out, like, is this menu, where's that menu? I can't kind of, So color, now, it's funny because they don't use color, but do use color to distinguish between foreground and background and contrast. And like I say, just think of a menu. You click on a menu, a drop down appears, and the drop down is the same color as, let's say, the background of the page. I don't know where the drop down starts and ends, and so it just sort of like blends into the page, and I'm losing, it's confusing. Does that make any sense? Yeah. Okay, I'm glad you understood it, so. Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
Hi, my name's Don Luke. I have a few comments to make about the accessibility and other overlays.
Okay.
I'm not in the business of building websites for people. I support a few.
Right.
I'm a volunteer driver for the Blind Rehab Center at the Tucson VA. So I have a lot of experience dealing with visually impaired veterans.
Okay.
And I started going to Zoom meetings at the start of the pandemic on website development, and I met a lady named Amber Hines.
Oh, yes, I know Amber.
Is
she here, Amber? Are you here? No.
I don't think she's here this bit. Yeah. But there's another lady here, Alicia St. Rose, and she'll give you an earful on overlays and how to make a website accessible and the proper way of doing it. And I've learned a lot about it, even though I don't get to put it into practice. But the overlays are a path that you approach with caution, because if you're not going by WCAG, depending on what the purpose of your website is, how big it is, what your audience is, and all that stuff, it can be a dangerous path to take.
Yeah.
So it's a choice you have to make for yourself, but it's be cautious when using the overlays.
What do you think of I'm going to ask you, what do you think of mega menus?
I'm not familiar with the term.
Well, I know it's been sort of my crusade for my life to kill all mega menus. I'm not doing a very good job, but that is a problem because anytime, again, too much information, and these mega menus could have pictures and videos. I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff come into a mega menu, and boy, it really can and if I couldn't, I have fairly, you can tell I can have a lot of good usable vision. But suppose I had RP and I lost virtually all of my site and I'd have to use JAWS. How am I going to navigate this thing? And if they can't navigate it, chances are the rest of us aren't going to, it will be a poor experience for us. So, Okay, anybody else?
Yes, hi. I had a question.
My God, I just realized I shouldn't have had a talk. I should have just let everybody ask questions. This is so much more fun. Okay.
I know that you mentioned everybody does things differently and there's different settings and choices, but I'm wondering if there's a universal thing that you see missing that we could be doing better.
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. Okay, here's one of my favorites. God will strike me dead, considering where I am. But a lot of people in the WordPress community who, are very attuned to accessibility, they'll create explainer videos with no audio track. Don't do that, because I won't like that. And I've complained about this for years. You'll see them in the documentation on WordPress.org. You'll see them all over the place. Stop doing that. You've got to have an audio track. Okay, yes, I know some people don't speak English, and I get all that stuff, but find somebody to speak English. I'll do it for you, because I can't follow and I use video all the time to learn things, if it's got an audio track. If it doesn't, I'm lost. I'm done. I cannot follow without audio what you're doing. And I guarantee you, I am not the only one that thinks this way. So if there's one thing, that I think is missing in the WordPress community as people that create content, explainers, all that stuff, that would be number one. is please don't do that. Think of me. And then I'm going to look at your video and I'm saying, I know that you're explaining how something in Gutenberg works that's coming out in 6.9, but I can't figure this out. And it's not, the idea is not to make people aggravated and, upset and, dependent on other people. We want to be independent. Everybody does. So does that help? Yeah. You've never made an explainer video without an audio track, have you? No, you wouldn't say that. You wouldn't admit it anyway. Okay, anybody else?
Yes.
Yes.
This is just my editorial comment. Don't assume that the only people who are visually impaired are visually impaired. If somebody has been drinking's legal in all 50 states. Marijuana's legal in
interesting.
25 states.
Right.
It's legal to drive with your kids screaming in the back and you're trying to find your way to the doctor's office.
Yes.
All those
Man,
cases,
that's good.
things like low contrast, lots of clutter, and mega menus make it really hard for people who are, somewhere between visually and cognitively impaired.
Right.
So
good point.
when you design your site, as you said earlier, when you design your site for the visually impaired, you're designing it for everybody who can't take the time to read everything and figure out what the heck you had in mind with your brilliant design.
Right. Yeah. And our mood and our everything, of course, it affects our vision. And just think about when you're angry, how your vision changes compared to when you're relaxed. Is that vision impairment? Well, I don't know, maybe not, but you get the point, which is your vision changes based on everything. Mood, day, sunlight, whatever. So yeah, all these things if we just follow some really sort of what I think common sense ideas, we're going to be in much better shape. Okay, guess what? I have 1 minute and 37 seconds left. Anybody else? Okay, so if you see me, say hi, okay? Introduce me say, hey, bud, I'm so-and-so. That always helps me, by the way, at these things. When somebody comes up to me and says, hey, bud, I'm, even if I know you, I may not just recognize you, because you now know that recognizing faces is a real problem. I sort of have. You heard about face blindness? Well, that's sort of like a very simple way of describing what I have. Okay, thank you all for coming. And you asked such good questions. Really, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.